From the Flint Hills Writing Project, this is The Suggestion Box, where teachers get ideas. I'm your host, Andrea Marshbank. Today we're talking to Dr. Heather and Dr. Roger Caswell of Emporia State University, and I'm so excited for this particular interview because this one hits so close to home, and I use that word really purposefully, because they are the directors of the Flint Hills Writing Project, which is in many, many ways my home. If you listen to the last episode, the pilot episode, I addressed how the Flint Hills Writing Project has been the patron, the spark for this entire podcast. And so I just wanted to share with you our origin story, where we're from, how this whole idea of a podcast came to be, and why it matters, and just to give you all of the background that you need in order to fully understand the history and the motivation behind the suggestion box. So we're gonna go ahead and go right into the interview. How are you doing today?
Doing great, thank you.
Good. Thank you for having us.
Thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. So I know what the Flint Hills Writing Project is because it changed my life. But if you both would just give our listeners, our teachers out there, an explanation of what it means when I say Flint Hills Writing Project, because it's not as known as I want it to be. So we're fixing that.
Okay, well, actually, Flint Hills Writing Project's been around since 2014, but our story actually begins in 1974 in Berkeley University in California. That is where the National Writing Project began. It was grassroots. Teachers were sitting around saying, there needs to be a better way to be teaching writing. And they firmly believed, and they based everything on two principles. If you're going to be a teacher of writing, you needed to be a writer. And the other principle was teachers teaching, teachers model. The best teacher for a teacher is another teacher. And so that's where it started in 1974. It grew from there, and over the years, there were over 200 sites across the country. Every state had one. Flint Hills Writing Project started in 2002 at Kansas State University in Manhattan, Kansas. It had 10 years of success and making a difference with teachers and a difference in their classrooms. And in 2012, it ended. Many sites across the country ended in 2012.
Can I ask, why was that?
Prior to that time, there was federal funding. It was a minimal federal funding, but it was enough funding to keep the sites going.
To keep the 200 sites going.
Right.
And then we lost the funding.
And so many sites just said, we've had our run. The university, we can't afford it. Because another thing with writing project sites, a writing project site must be affiliated with a university. And initially, National Writing Project Site did that because they believed they would have financial and emotional support from a university.
Mm-hmm. Like they invest in each other.
Yes.
Okay.
So again, in 2012, it ended. And then there was no site. In fact, Kansas was the only state in the union that did not have a writing project site.
Oh, man. Oh, Kansas and education.
So actually, we are products of the Flint Hills Writing Project at Kansas State University. Roger went through the Invitational Leadership Institute in 2002, so he was like the founding group of that site. And then I went through the Invitational Leadership Institute in 2003. And so we have a long history of that experience as teachers. And when we went to Emporia State University as faculty members, we kept thinking about what could be the possibility of starting the site at Emporia State University. And so right along that time that we were having this thought and this conversation, National Writing Project contacted us also and said, I think it's time. And we said, yes, it is. So in 2014, in order to become a site, you have to hold an Invitational Leadership Institute. And so we did that successfully, went through some interview process with the National Writing Project, and then we were able to become a site. So since 2014, Flint Hills Writing Project has been home at Emporia State University, and we talked to the previous director and asked if we could continue that history in that home. And of course, he was very excited to do that. So,
for our listeners out there, Roger and Heather are actually married, so and they're the most wonderful power couple you've ever met. And by wonderful, I mean also sweetest and still wonderful. So were you both married at that point when you decided to go to Emporia as faculty?
Yes. So we met actually in the Summer Institute. We came back as leaders. Some of our teacher consultants at Emporia will come back each summer as a leader among the Invitational Leadership Institute. And so we played that role when we were teachers. And through that leadership, we started working together professionally, and that was kind of how our other relationship started. And we were able to actually elope at a National Writing Project national meeting in Nashville, Tennessee.
Isn't that crazy? That's so, everything is National Writing Project. It's everywhere. This is amazing.
And I think National Writing Project likes to boast about that too.
It's a great story. Like you have this most amazing, like the start and the finish and everything is just interwoven with National Writing Project. Well, I'm sorry I got you off track there. When you talk about the Invitational Leadership Institute, which is actually what I went through in 2017, which was the most magical part for me and for many other educators, what is entailed in the Invitational Leadership Institute? Like what kind of teachers go? What experiences do they get? What do they come away with it?
So the National Writing Project, it all starts with the Invitational Leadership Institute, which they used to call the Summer Institute, but now sites are putting it year-round, or they're doing different structures of that institute. But basically, it's a invitational institute.
So that means you do apply for it.
Mm-hmm. And it is, our site is reaching out statewide, so it's teachers across the state that can apply to come to the Leadership Institute. And it is pre-K through 16, all content areas. So teachers that teach science or art, we've had special education, we've had ELL teachers, instructional coaches. So it's not just specific to English teachers or those who teach literacy.
Yeah. English teachers are the ones that mostly attend for obvious reasons, but we firmly believe that literacy is in every single subject matter.
Yeah. Well, when I went through it, we had a librarian and a gifted facilitator as well as a social studies teacher, and they all found it extremely helpful and rewarding, even without the, everybody reads and writes.
So we've been having a Invitational Leadership Institute since 2014, every summer, and through those institutes, we've been able to get teacher leaders out of that, and they've been coming back and helping us grow and develop through other statewide experiences. The 2016, we put on a statewide writing conference, and they were able to develop a mission statement, which you can find on our website. So they've just become very active, and each year we just grow more and more in the activities that we do and the different things that we offer for teachers.
What do you think the teachers' motivation to finish the program as a teacher leader, but also to continue contributing to the program? Because I speak from personal experience when I say that I'm not the only teacher who is trying to give back to FHWP, Flint Hills Writing Project, as much as humanly possible. And what about the experience and the ILI and the Invitational Leadership Institute makes teachers excited about learning in a way that they maybe don't get from other professional development experiences?
I think it's their voice. I really believe that teachers feel like they have a voice once they come to the ILI and then the other activities we do. And it's not just a voice, but their voice is heard. And they're empowered by that. And everything we do seems to be authentic. I mean, we're not into scripted programs. We believe writing is writing. As long as you have a pad of paper and a pencil, you can write. And I think we can make differences. And I believe when teachers come, they see, and I don't want to say the word simple because it's not simple, but they see how simple it is to teach writing. That it doesn't have to go through this very rigid process. And they realize that they will just start writing, and when they go back to their classrooms, they try out these strategies to their students, and their students will amaze them. And they're just really amazed that their students are writing as much as they were, because a lot of times before teachers come, they can't get their students to write. There's a lot of blockage, but they find a way to get working now.
And I think too that teachers are FHWP. I think the unique part of the Institute is that it is the teachers who guide what we do. So it's their questions, it's their interests, it's their students, it's everything is really grounded in what they do. And that's the unique part of this professional development, is it's not going somewhere to get information, but it's that co-creating of an implementation or a process. And it's time and space to be able to do that. I think we're so busy as teachers that we don't have time just to sit in an idea or to think about something or work through a practice and then be able to go into our classrooms and do that.
I completely agree. There are so few hours in the day, I've discovered, as I've become a teacher, and I never had that problem before, even as a pre-teacher. And I do want to reference part of my experience when I was there. Heather and Roger are constantly evolving the program to try to make it better and more productive and more able to fit the lives of teachers all over the state of Kansas. As they said, they are the only writing project site in the state of Kansas. So when I was going through the Invitational Leadership Institute, one of the things that I can speak to about what Heather said about it's very teacher focused is we had these awesome inquiry workshops where we brought questions to the table about how could we do X thing better in our teaching, and presented kind of in the manner of like what you would see like a traditional teacher conference, but actually different, because it's not me standing up saying I know how to do this really well. It's me saying I'm actually really, really poor at this, or really not great or bad, or I'm struggling, can you help me? And it kind of flipped the whole idea on its head. So when she talks about co-creation, I feel like as teachers sometimes we hear like PD, co-creation, synergy, and we're like, this, but it was such, like Roger said, an authentic experience. It was so genuine and serving of the teachers, and I am forever grateful, as are many of the other teachers that have gone through the program.
And the invitational leadership is just the start. So it kind of gives us all kind of a foundation that we all start on. So we kind of come together with this common understanding and a common experience. And then from there, we just listen to each other as a site and think about what do we need next. And that's when advanced institutes happen based on interest or need. We've done writing retreats, writing marathons. Of course, I talked about the writing conference. Right now, Andrea's doing a youth writing program. We have open seminars, writing groups. This last summer, the writing group came out of, so every month, teachers get together to write together and talk about their writing. We've developed over the years a teacher leadership team, which I think has been one of our key aspects for success, because Roger and I listen and we hear the voices of the teachers, and then we try to think about, well, what can we do to create that, or what can we do to get funding to be able to do that? So we've got youth book camps. Writers Inc. was a partnership with a professor in literacy at our university. So just all kinds of things are going on at one time, and it's all based on needs and interests and passions within our teachers.
Absolutely. So we've kind of covered the Flint Hills Writing Project, a little bit of its background with Manhattan and the closing of the sites due to some funding cuts. So that we've addressed a few of the surprising failures along the way. But did you have any challenges in the creation of Flint Hills Writing Projects, or any successes that really resonate with you today?
We always seem to look at challenges as an opportunity for growth, and we tend to be very reflective practitioners, sometimes to the point where maybe we're too much of a reflective practitioner.
Well, how are you, because reflection is like my middle name, so how are you too reflective?
Where we sleep, eat, drink, breathe.
I mean, I guess that's true. You go home and it must be hard to turn off work.
But we do see.
Yeah, I don't think there's a difference between personal life and work, especially when it comes to the Institute, because it is such a personal part of our life.
So we really try, challenges we embrace as an opportunity for growth and development, and that was where our leadership team became such an important part, because we were able to work together collaboratively and think through possible challenges. But some of the challenges that I think we have encountered is we come from a 5-week institute. And so we remember 5 weeks of this intense and this family that comes out of the writing project. And so when we were getting ready to create our own site and create our own institute, a lot of teachers cannot take 5 weeks over the summer to.
And I think we need to add that it is 5 weeks, but we start at 9 in the morning and we go to 4. So it's 9 to 4 every day.
Monday through Thursday. Yeah. So that was one challenge that we kind of thought about. How do we put 5 weeks into like 3 weeks, or how do we, allow that family environment to be created where it feels like home, and you have this network of teachers that you can always collaborate.
And I think that was our
with.
biggest fear when we went from 5 to 3. We did not want to lose that home, that safe spot. And so I think that was a big challenge.
Right, because another strength of the Writing Project is those relationships and those partnerships between teachers across the state. So being able to have those individuals that you can call on at any time and be able to ask for their advice or their support, I think is very important. So that was one challenge that we had, was going from a 5-week to a 3-week institute.
Yeah, and that reminds me a lot of different points in our lives where we're shifting into a new space where you everybody there doesn't have people that they know, and so you latch, much like you would if you were like going to college and living in a dorm. Right. And those relationships matter. Because
a part of the Leadership Institute is that relationship building, and it's getting together. It's not just sitting there reading and writing, but it's those relationships that we're trying to build. And it's interesting when we have follow-up activities. We can mingle very well between the years, but every participant, every fellow, and I think you can attest to this, Andrea, your 2017 is your nucleus. And when you see them, you get very excited because you shared so much. That doesn't mean you can't go, because this spring we had our 3rd annual writing retreat, and it was a combination of all the different years, and I think it went very well. But you hold a special place in your heart for the ones that you experience in your summer.
Yeah, the shared experiences are powerful. Yeah. And then another challenge that we, I think, are confronted with is that we are serving the state of Kansas. So typically, a writing project site within a state will service a radius of a mileage radius, where there's maybe 3 different writing project sites within a state. So, you're not having to reach quite so far. And so that's one thing that we have tried to creatively
we literally cover 105 counties. Mm-hmm. Kansas is a pretty big state. This is.
So one way we've done that is the university has been able to help in supporting housing. So when teachers do come for the summer, we are able to put them up in a place where they can stay for the entire week, which again helps with that building of the community and the family environment and the home of the writing project, but then also it lessens that stress of travel and having to go back and forth.
Because someone who lives 7 hours away and is still in Kansas, they can't be there at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 4. It doesn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. That reminds me of how the first year of the Invitational Leadership Institute, when you were having to show NWP that you could hold a project. The first years, gosh, what year would that? 2014. 2014. Yeah, and this is like what you said, Roger, where we kind of fall into our cadres of 2014 is always like we had to pay for our hotels.
Well, yeah. Yes, we didn't have funding at that time.
2017 got spoiled.
They like to remind us.
Yes, they do. But they get the honor of being called the charter year.
Yes.
So
they are the the legacy that we all follow. So. Yeah.
And because that year we had someone far away as 2.5 hours, and she was never late. She was always there at 9. And she always stayed at 4, and she traveled back and forth every single day.
Oh my goodness, where was she from?
Arkansas City.
Oh my, that's a lot.
She did not miss a day for 3 weeks.
Man, good for her. I'm just like,
But
that's
again,
a lot of
but
driving.
again, to me, that shows that we were reaching a need.
Yes, and I think that is so important and critical to emphasize, is that you are, like, there are so many people who want to be in the Flint Hills Writing Project, and when I talk about it, it's almost hard to describe how excited teachers are when they see what's happening. I think a lot of times they're like initially very wary, like we talked about, like I don't want to do like more things during my summer that make me mind-numbingly bored, and that's not what this is. It's different.
And you feel that also, Roger was talking about at the writing retreats and about the times when we come back together and you start seeing your family again, and then you start building relationships with other cohorts. But you feel that at the national level too, when you go to national meetings and you start building relationships at that level as well, because they all come together with a foundation of thinking, and we can share the same language and we can have the same conversations because we all believe the same thing and are passionate about writing and about teaching of writing.
And that philosophy, that base philosophy that you believe in, what would you, like, if you had to distill it down to kind of one germ of a notion, what would that be?
Sure. Well, I think it goes, Roger and I always go back to the teachers being writers themselves, to understand the process so that when they are working with young writers or young learners, they can understand those struggles, those challenges, those celebrations. So when we put ourselves in the experience that we expect our learners to be in, we can value that and understand that and experience that in a way that we know what we're expecting out of them, and be able to empathize with them. And then I also think it's the teachers teaching teachers model. I mean, I think so much is told that we're told we have to do this or we have to do that, but we fully believe that teachers know what is best. They're professionals. They're trained individuals who have had a degree behind them. They know what, if not 2 or 3, they know what they need to do, and it just they just need time and space to be able to create what they need to do, and be able to be confident in what they need to do, and have a voice to be able to say, I know this is important, and here's what I'm going to do.
If only we had a room full of administrators right now. Because I think every teacher listening to this podcast is just like clapping in their car on their commute to work. Don't crash, guys. No. Yes. Oh man. Well, I got us kind of off of our original question. I'm sorry, Heather. So we went through a couple of challenges. Yeah. Did you have any others that you could specify that you felt were really core to your process?
I think we again see failures as an opportunity to grow. So it's very hard for us to identify failures. I think we just constantly see it as an opportunity to even make what we're doing even more effective or empowering. And so I think again it's more challenges than it is failures. Yeah. And I think all teachers experience that. I think we just as teachers, we just have to think about how do we continually evolve and improve what we're doing.
I completely agree, and I think that there's a lot of, not that teaching should ever be reflected as a business model, but there's like a lot of leadership text out there that's all about how failures should be viewed positively. And in my head, as we were talking right now, I was like, we should find a different word for failures. Failures is a very negatively connotated word, and you said the word challenges, and I was like, oh, we have a word.
Well, and right and wrong. I think we try really hard to promote during the ILI that there's no right or wrong way to teach. It's all based on what do your students need, or what do you need, and how do you move forward to get there. And I think that's really hard for us to break as educators, because we've just been immersed in an environment that it's either right or it's wrong,
So to change topics, to transition into a different place, we already talked a little bit about how you're personally involved, because the National Writing Project and the Flint Hills Writing Project are kind of like, it's interwoven throughout both of your lives in a way that you should write a book about. But beyond that, how are you both personally inclined to provide so much support to the Flint Hills Writing Project? And let me just specify to our listeners out there that they go above and beyond, and they never clarify whether or not they're getting paid, but like mostly they aren't. Like they go so far into it. And so I'm personally very curious about why do you do so much for this? How does this benefit you, because that's crass, but how does this like appeal to you?
Well, I feel like we need to give back to the profession. Heather and I have a personal and a professional passion for Flint Hills Writing Project. I mean, that's where we started. That's where we personally continue to grow. And so it continues to be very important to us. And we also have been in the classroom. We also know sometimes teachers' voices are not heard. They're not listened to. And we're on a mission. If you have a project, if you have a voice, and all teachers do have voices, we want to hear your voice, we want to hear your project, and we want to do whatever we can to help whatever project you have. So it's not Heather and I doing the project. I mean, Heather and I are definitely not the Flint Hills Writing Project. We are the facilitators of what is out there. The Flint Hills Writing Project is definitely, and first, most importantly, it is those people who come in the summer to work and on their own profession to deepen their own understanding of what it is to be a literate person who has a passion for teaching children, whether it be preschool children, middle school students, high school, or even college students. They have a passion and they have their ideas, and we're just there to help them as much as we possibly can. Sometimes we find funding for that, to kind of do it that way. Other times there may not be funding, so we have to be the emotional coaches. And so we try to do that as well, because every single success that a teacher has, to us, that's a success of Flint Hills Writing Project.
So Roger is correct. This is not our paid job, right? we have another job that keeps us quite busy. But we're always drawn to the work of Flint Hills Writing Project because it is our passion. Actually, the Flint Hills Writing Project is made me the teacher that I am today. I truly believe that it has impacted my teaching, and it's impacted how I work with students and how I work with teachers. And I think what I valued most about that was the space and time that it allowed for us to develop ourselves as personal individuals as well as teachers. And it also allowed us to listen to multiple perspectives and hear different voices from the field. And so we could constantly be calling on those individuals that we trusted to support us, to be our little cheerleaders, to tell us you can do this. I always felt like when I came back to the writing project as a teacher, I always felt like I was going to be supported and I was going to be inspired when I went back into my classroom or when I went back the next week to teach. It was that energy and that motivation to keep going.
That's really interesting. In that is almost verbatim what I would say the motivation for the suggestion box was. We want to provide as a whole program behind this podcast that similar like idea generating creating moment where we are inspired with different things going on all around us, and to create a different community, right, than like spending 5 or 3 or 2 weeks with a group of people in a hotel in Emporia, Kansas. But a community nonetheless. Like that's very much the vision that I had for the suggestion box in correlation with the Flint Hills Writing Project. And so this transitions pretty nicely into what do you both see from the suggestion box? And to clarify, Roger and Heather have supported me in the equipment and the giving me the emotional support, as they were speaking about earlier, and the just support overall, just a lot of cheerleading with this particular process and accessing of resources that I might not have been able to otherwise. And so they are very much a part of this. So for both of you, like what is how does the suggestion box fit within this vision that Heather has created, or not Heather has created, that Heather has outlined for us, and what is your hope for it?
Well, the suggestion box clearly fits the two principles of National Writing Project. It's teachers teaching teachers model. I mean, you are the teacher teaching other teachers. The guests you have on are teachers. They're teaching other teachers. And then the other principle is if you want to be a teacher of writing, you need to be writing. And so those are who you have here as guests. The other thing to me is this was a passion that you really wanted to do. We had a responsibility to do what we could so that you could make this become a reality.
I'm gonna cry in the middle of a podcast.
Well, and sometimes the powerful element of the suggestion box, I think, is that when we are listening to another teacher share their story and we start identifying with that story, we become empowered to continue doing what we know is best for our students, what we know is best for those that we work with. So I think that's the powerful piece of the suggestion box, is it's teachers having a conversation with one another. Their voice becomes very empowering for each other, and it just allows us to continue moving forward for authentic change in education.
Absolutely. I think that the path of education, like as a whole, in policy and in the language that we use about leadership and education, there should be a lot more of teachers teaching teachers. And I really liked how you used the word empower. That's one of my favorite words, is empower. And empowering other teachers so that they can empower their students, and then we can all just be powerful together.
And you brought up a good point about how not everyone can come to the ILI during the summer or for that extended time. And that's the beauty of this suggestion box, is that it's small amounts of time that can have those types of experiences through a distance. And so I think that's also a part that we really support in our vision for what you're going to do.
Well, I'm glad that fits well, because I already have the equipment, so here we are. So for the future of the Flint Hills Writing Project, like, what do you because I'm not, like, there are so many teacher leaders, teacher consultants that we have doing fantastic things. So what are some of the goals for the Flint Hills Writing Project, both short and long term, that our listeners can be looking out for, that can be excited about with us?
So at our writing retreat every year, one thing that we started doing this year was we put out all these big sticky Post-its, and we had the teachers start kind of just thinking of the possibilities, right? And then our role is to go and look at those possibilities and think, how do we make those realities, right? And so I think that kind of is our vision, is to constantly look at what teachers are needing and how we can try to meet those needs. So one way that we're continuing to grow the network and to meet those needs is we've had an ILI, which is the Invitational Leadership Institute, every summer. And this year we're going to try a year-round institute. So they're going to be coming for 2 weeks in the summer, and then we'll have weekends throughout the year that will come together. And we're hoping that will embed the professional development within their practice.
And it's also a concern of ours. We went from 5 to 3 weeks. Now we're going to 2 weeks in the summer. So that is a challenge to still create that safe space, that home. But we feel it's worth trying, because we will be embedding the practice throughout the year. So when they come back for their October, they will be trying things out from what they learned in the summer and trying them out in the classroom. And they're back in that safe space to discuss, I did this, how can I change this? And so again, we become that little network. And so we're still pushing that cohort. And so they're going to work on activities or what they're doing in the classroom. They'll come back in January. Okay, this is where I'm at now with my students. So again, it's totally unlike when the principal comes in with his or her notepads and marks down what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, because that's not what we're there about. But it's that constant, I'm trying this, I'm trying that. Oops, this didn't work well. Well, it's okay, because we do believe that we learn best from our challenges.
Yeah. And as leaders, that's what we've been doing too. I think we had a year-round advanced institute this last year, and I think as directors of the project, we saw how embedding that into your daily practice and coming together on weekends and then going back into the classroom and implementing what you're doing and reflecting on that was quite empowering.
Right, and that's one reason why we
so,
thought maybe
yeah.
we should try taking the ILI year-round as well.
Yeah. So, and then another thing that we're hoping to do short-term goal-wise is start having more individual advanced institutes based on teacher needs. So you brought up one about the grading or non-grading. So interests that teachers have within our writing project, and thinking about how we can start having little cohorts start working on those types of concepts and ideas, and kind of having these little work groups as being advanced institutes.
That would meet year-round, maybe every third month get together again. So we're looking at possibly doing maybe 2 or even 3 advanced institutes in this coming year, but each one would be on a different topic. And so the same fellows, the same teachers, consultants would not be coming to the same ones unless they wanted to, but actually have 3 different groupings going on all throughout the year.
And that's what's wonderful about the writing project and about the Flint Hills Writing Project is that teachers don't have to participate in everything. You know, they can select what they feel meets their needs, and if they feel like they don't have anything at this time that they need to be part of, then that's okay. But that Flint Hills is always here when they do need something. And I think that's the beauty of the network that we've created.
We have talked a great deal about the wonderful glory, terrificness, all of those words that you write on spelling tests. That's what the Flint Hills Writing Project is. Those like good job words. That is the Flint Hills Writing Project. Everything about it it's I think that Roger and Heather would argue with me when I say that it's teacher professional development perfection, but I would argue back. And it is what I need from teacher professional development. And maybe when you're listening to this, it might also be what you need. This might also be something that really appeals to you. And if you're a listener in Kansas, you know where to reach. And their website is FHWP.org. And I will link that in the show notes, but it's real simple, right? Flint Hills Writing Project, FHWP.org. All the information's there. I'll put their Dr. Caswell and Dr. Caswell's email in the show notes as well, if you would like to reach them personally. But what do our listeners do who aren't in Kansas? How do they find a place where they can experience this community, this family, this home?
Well, if they go to nwp.org, National Writing Project, nwp.org, they can find a site that is close to them. As I said, there are sites in all 50 states.
And we've even had teachers who've moved out of the state, and so even though they've been through the Invitational leadership here in Kansas and they've moved to another state, they connect with their writing projects site there. So the family, the home environment just continues to grow wherever you're at, and you just make that connection as soon as you get to where your next journey is. So.
Well, we will link all of that in the show notes so that you can click around and find it. But, the very simple names, nwp.org, fhwp.org. So make sure to look into that and to check it out. Thank you so much, Roger and Heather, for being here today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea.
I'm extraordinarily glad to have Heather and Roger come on today and talk to everybody about how the podcast has a vision and how their vision and the podcast vision are very closely entwined, and how we're trying to take a different piece, not a small piece, but a different piece of the Flint Hills Writing Project and bring it to you wherever you are. Because that's the nice thing about podcasts, is as nice as it is to take off 2 weeks in the summer and to go and be in this magical community, it's really hard. And maybe even in addition to that, this podcast is just an easy way to consume some of the great parts of FHWP. So if you're interested, I highly encourage you to look it up, to go through the websites that we mentioned earlier in the podcast. You will not regret it. And again, if you are still listening and you are not an English teacher, it's still for you. This is not secondary alone. This is not middle school or elementary alone. It is K through 16. And it took me a really long time to figure out 16 means college level too. So just so you know, 16 is also college level. Thank you everybody for listening. If you love the suggestion box, or you like this episode, or you like episodes to come, please make sure to subscribe and give us a review on Apple Podcasts, which is formerly iTunes. We will be on Google Play and YouTube and hopefully everywhere you can get podcasts very, very soon. Just a reminder that this episode and the episode prior, the pilot, are a little bit different than what we're normally going to do. It's normally going to be an interview between myself and another educator talking about a very tangible way to implement something in your classroom. But these episodes are special and important, so I hope you enjoyed them. Make sure to find us on social media. It's the Suggestion Box Podcast everywhere. We're very consistent. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Our email is thesuggestionboxpodcast@gmail.com. Our website is thesuggestionboxpodcast.com. If you have any great ideas, you want to be on the podcast, or you want to, nominate somebody to be on the podcast, lesson plans or units or strategies that you find are amazing and you just want to suggest to our listeners, to the world, let me know. Contact me via our website or our email. Special thank you to Dr. Heather and Roger Caswell, in addition to their wonderful interview today, but also just help making this podcast possible, to our magnificent graphic designer, Kristen McGriff, and also to Sonic Tonic Audio, who helped provide some of the music that you hear today. See you next time, everyone.